so much. So Yoron, would you like to tell us anything about that tune before we...
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Even in the back? Yeah. All right. That composition was entitled The Move, and that's a composition that you can find on my very first recording entitled A Gift for You. The inspiration for writing that song was actually, I guess, somewhat of a sad situation that turned into a positive situation because the composition came out of that situation. So it was actually around the time when it was written really for my dad. He was actually moving, relocating, and I was in college, or getting ready to finish college, and he was moving to another state. So I was saddened by that, but happy at the same time for him because it was a better move for him. And it inspired this composition. So I just sat on the composition for many, many years, and when I had a chance to record my first recording, I remembered that song. And the great thing about that song is that at the time I was actually working with someone who many of you may know. His name is James Williams. Very great, the late James Williams, great composer, great pianist, and band leader. And I was working with him at the time. We had a band called the Intensive Care Unit. And I was honored that he agreed to be a featured artist on that recording. So this particular song actually features him as the pianist. And he actually played the piano like he wrote the song. I mean, so it was really, so that's kind of the story behind The Move. It's a song that I still to this day love to play. I hope you enjoyed it.
Very much.
Thank you. And I should admit that as much as my objectives for Jazz Up Close are altruistic and community-based, I'm sure it's a treat to play this particular tune with you, given that James Williams is one of my tiny handful of biggest influences as a musician. Yeah. And so it wasn't the first time I heard Yoron play, but I did get to hear him several times with the aforementioned Intensive Care Unit. And it is, all that music is sadly out of print, but you can find it in the corners of the interwebs, and it's worth seeking out.
Have to look deep.
Do we have any questions up front before? Okay. Start in the back and then.
Hi, my name is Michael, and
Hi, Michael.
I love, for one,
thank you for doing the Jazz Up Close again, because I know COVID messed things up, and I've been here several times, and it's always a joy. Just in brief, childhood, how you got into, I used to play cello, but how you got into playing percussion, and what inspired you to continue now?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? I'll try to be brief.
I said it brief.
Yeah. The brief story is that I started actually, my involvement with music at large was built around really the church. As a young person, you know, my parents took me to church, sometimes not at my doing or my decision, but I was glad they did, because I happened to go to a church that had a really prolific music program. So week after week after week, I just heard this fantastic music, vocal music, instrumental music, and as a child, I can just remember, I just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't care if I was the roadie. I didn't care whatever, but I just wanted to be a part of it. So my first instrument was actually voice, because I wanted to be a part of it, and the instruments were taken, you know. And later on, I moved to piano, because the piano player left, and there was a grand piano sitting there, and nobody was on it, so I started playing the piano. But lo and behold, took piano lessons, and by the time I got around junior high school, I wanted to be a part of the band, and there was no piano in the band. So then I moved to percussion, because that's where a need was. And so
Actually, you were already playing
percussion, exactly. And the funny story about that is that I excelled really at a fast pace because of that background that I had as a pianist. I could already read music, and I could play the instruments that a lot of my friends didn't want to play. I could play the bells, and I could play the timpani, and I could play those things that, you know, that others didn't want to play because of what it required. So that's the short end of how I got started. The short story, short version.
Thank you. And oh my goodness. So, and if I don't get to your question between now and the next tune, I promise I will. I think I saw Chuck's hand next. So.
Yes, this is not a question but a statement, because Mr. Baerman is probably too humble to mention it, but if you want to hear James Williams's inspiration on him, then you should pick up the new album he and Henry have just released.
Yeah.
That is actually named after a James Williams tune. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Noah? Yes, it's called Alter Ego.
Alter Ego. Yeah, it's a great
just
song.
happened to play that song on my show the other morning, and it's great. So
Great.
I encourage you to pick up that
Yeah.
Alter Ego at the end of the show today,
Yeah.
along with a couple CDs by Yoron too.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. Alter Ego was one of those songs that when we performed, we really couldn't do a performance without that one. And a lot of times the request didn't come from the audience, it came from us. So, the band members. So.
Right on. Thank you. So we'll take one more question before Stephen. Yes.
First of all, I just want to say that opening solo of this was jaw-dropping.
Thank you.
You know, since you play musical instruments other than the percussion, I imagine you as writing all the parts. And this might be a question for the other members of the band: do you write the percussion parts for pieces you compose?
Well, speaking for myself, because I teach ensembles, and you know, I do workshops where with not just percussionists but with, you know, bands, ensembles. So I do have to take some responsibility, even though they're my compositions, to write something that the drummer would be able to have, so that they could gain the information about the song as quickly as everybody else. So yes, but the parts are not like every single note that you play, but it just gives, and especially playing jazz, I think my colleagues will agree, we typically work from what's called a lead sheet. And that lead sheet would have the melody, and it would have the chord changes. You could clearly see the form and maybe some other indications. So, well, the percussionist would have to be able to interpret that just like the other instrument. Now, sometimes I might write something very specific for percussion, you know, and then it might go beyond the lead sheet. But for the most part, you know, percussionists are responsible for being able to interpret a lead sheet just like other instrumentalists.
I think as a rule, the balance, especially in small group jazz, is to provide as close as possible to the optimal amount of information, because if you provide not enough information to know how the song is supposed to go, then things might not be as precise as they should be. But if you get too precise, then you're essentially taking the agency out of the hands of improvising musicians, which if you hear something super specific, then maybe that's worth it, but on some level it's sort of a squandering. If I wrote out a really precise percussion part for Yoron to play, I would basically be saying, I don't trust you to do the right thing on this tune, and so play exactly this as though you were a computer.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you might as well get a computer to do that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, invariably the most exciting moments I've had hearing a great drummer, Yoron's played my music on a number of occasions, is if something that I didn't plan happened. You know, like, here's how the song goes, here's all the basic information from which you can make good decisions, and then I want to hear what that musician in that moment is going to bring to it. And again, if it's not that that's the only valid way to do it, but it's kind of getting away from the improvisational spirit of jazz if there's too much rigidity to that. Do you want to set up this next one?
Yeah, so this next song is a song that I wrote for my middle daughter. It's called Amylah Song. And one of the things that I think inspired me about writing this particular song for her and about her is she's a dancer. As a youth, she danced, and she loves dancing even to this day as an adult. So it kind of has that kind of feeling to me. So that's the feeling that I was trying to, this fluidity type of movement, but at the same time, a certain amount of beauty and pristine quality to it as well. So hope you enjoy. It's called Amylah Song. It's actually, I recorded this song, well, I personally, on my recordings, I recorded this song on a record called Basic Training. I recorded, but a couple other people have recorded it on other records. A colleague of ours, I think, his name is Avery Sharp. This is on one of his recordings, and a gentleman, European vibraphonist, Wolfgang Lockersmith, has actually recorded this song as well. So, hope you enjoy.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that one?
That
then,
one.
including the jazz lingo that it signifies, if I'm interpreting the title correctly.
That's exactly what that's about. You know, as jazz musicians, we have many different terminologies that's unique to the jazz musician, right? And one of those is a word called tippin. Now, what that means, the short of it is that just music that has a good feeling. You know, as we were playing, I was kind of taking a little inventory there just to see how many heads were bobbing and feet were tapping. And then if I saw a few of you doing it, then I know, okay, they're getting the idea of this song. Because that's what this song is about. It's called Tippin. And one of the things that inspired this particular melody and when I was writing this song, one memory that I had that inspired this is I did a concert similar to this where there were questions being asked, and someone asked particularly about the brushes. And so that really sparked the inspiration behind this particular song entitled Tippin.
Thank you. And I should point out that the recording that this comes from, Basic Training, in addition to being available there, features Wesleyan professor Jay Hogard. And so some of you may, without having realized it until this very moment, may have heard Yoron play on the many occasions that he's come up to participate in Professor Hogard's projects. And so this was a nice instance of returning the favor.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Jay comes. He knows I'm here, but I've known Jay for a very long time. And he'll let you know that too. Since I was, let him tell it since I was a child. But he's actually featured heavily on this particular song. I'm glad you mentioned that because on Basic Training, this is one that I had his sound in mind. That was another inspirational part of writing this song.
Thank you. Yeah, it's actually a very Connecticut-heavy track now that I think about it, with Ed Cherry from New Haven.
Ed Cherry,
yeah. Any more questions? I think I saw some hands that were neglected. Don, I know I neglected you, and I'll get to you next.
Good afternoon and welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
I must confess that I'm often baffled by drum solos. I don't always understand, or usually don't understand them. Sometimes it just goes off and I can't see it or whatever. Do you have suggestions for listening, things to listen to in a drum solo, or how to listen to one?
I think without getting too technical, I think, try to listen and see how it makes you feel. Listen for the feeling of it. A lot of times, and if you have some kind of appreciation for rhythm, then try to find the rhythmic ideas. Because a lot of times on many drum solos, you'll hear the use of repetition of general, like a rhythmic idea, ba 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 da ba, and that might come up again, and the players improvising off this little small nucleus of an idea. But then, as you mentioned, then he or she is expanding on that idea. But generally, they might still keep that idea somewhere in there. So try to pick out a motif, a rhythmic motif, and try to see if you can follow it being transformed in different ways, so to speak. And then the other thing to keep in mind, a lot of times texture and dynamics are used. So you could kind of follow that as well. When we're playing, at least from my perspective and most jazz drummers, if we're playing within a song, we're actually looking to keep the same form, if you know what I mean by form. Let's say it's a song like this, which is a 12-bar structure, a 12-measure structure. So when we take a solo, we're still playing on that same 12-measure structure. So this would be a good idea might be to, if you know the melody of the song, see if you can hum the melody through the drum solo. That's really good. Those of you that have that kind of concentration.
Yeah, thank you. And if it wasn't self-evident, since we're in didactic mode here, when Yoron and Henry were going back and forth trading phrases, all of that was within the precise structure of the song. So those 12 measures he described, we divided up into 4-bar increments, and each of them took turns playing that. But it wasn't like play until you're done and have said your piece and pass it along. It's all operating within the structure of the song. Yes.
Hi, I'm Chris. I've been playing drums for a while, and I was wondering if you could explain exactly what you're doing with your hand for traditional grip when you're copying.
That's a. Whew.
We're getting deep into
We're getting deep here. I'll give you a simple concept. One concept is to listen to the other players and fit your left hand, let your left hand relate typically to piano, or if you have a guitar player, or if there's a horn player, your left hand should have something to do with, what you're playing rhythmically should have something to do with what's going on. Get some water.
I understand how copying works, but your actual technique for holding the drumstick.
Oh, okay. I think a dust particle.
Noah's getting water. Yeah.
Okay, so that is again, excuse me. Thanks. I guess I haven't talked this long for a long time. Actually, I did a clinic just the other day, so maybe it's the voice being tired. Yeah. So with this grip, the traditional grip, it's funny. I went to I'm getting off topic a little bit, but I went to a college football game recently, and it was a HBCU game. And so the bands of these schools are phenomenal. So as a percussionist, I was expecting everybody to actually have this new grip or newer grip called the match grip, where the hands look the same. But to my surprise, these young students, college students, are still playing traditional grip. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. So, side note to that, this grip came about from people playing with a sling. So the snare drum naturally tilted this way. So it wasn't like this it was a reason why drummers started holding the sticks that go back to the 1800s. So this grip came about because the drum leaned, and this was a convenient way to get the best angle out of the instrument. But the answer to what your direct answer, it hinges on what we call a fulcrum. It's like a seesaw. There has to be a balance point, and that balance point is there. So that has to be really strong. If you look at, even if you look at my hand, you develop a certain muscle there, because even if I didn't use the other fingers, I could play just like this, because you develop, and I'm not squeezing, it's like almost like a vice where the stick is not moving, okay? And then so that's the main part, that has to be strong. And then the fingers just more or less hold the stick from moving sideways. So that fulcrum is the key. I hope that answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
And kind of developed something over the past few months. I think I interpreted a tutorial wrong. So
okay.
What I do is I have I kind of bump the stick up and down with my middle finger like this.
Yeah.
And that's how I usually play really fast rhythms.
Well, the fingers are involved, but don't leave out this part.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Right on.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I will promise to get yours next after we come out of this next song, which we're going to introduce. Thank you all for your patience.
Yeah.
And, let me set this one up.
So this is a song off my recent recording. I have a new recording entitled New Dreams, which is actually was the idea for this whole record. It actually came out of the pandemic. probably about 30% of the recording was done during the pandemic, where we had to figure out as musicians how to, finagle technology where people could record at home and send their results, and then we all put it together. So some of the record was done that way, probably about 20-30%. But this was a song featured. This is a song featured on that record, and this song is called Morning Song. And I think it speaks well to the theme of the entire record. The record is called New Dreams because a lot of, the pandemic, at least for me and I think for most of you, it caused us to think of some different ways, even if we want to admit it or we don't admit it. And so with that, I feel to take something positive out of those experiences, and it hopefully will inspire some new hopes, some new aspirations, some new dreams, some new goals, and that kind of thing. So that's the idea of the whole record. And this song called Morning Song is kind of speaks to the beginning of all that, like waking up in the morning, waking up past the pandemic, and that kind of thing. So I hope you enjoy. Morning, M-O-R-N-I-N-G.
Waking up in the morning, M-O-U-R.
No, not that one. Not that one. Yeah. All those, let's not get too. But new morning, a new day, a newness, a new dawn. Yes. And this is going to feature our bassist. We're gonna have Henry play a little bit out front, and we're gonna all join him. And this is gonna be a moment of improvisation, and then we're gonna set up the song and go from there. we haven't had a lot of time to play this music, so I just have to give it up to these gentlemen who are playing. Noah Baerman. Also Henry Lugo.
Well, why don't we play one more and then we'll take our next round of questions.
Okay. This one, you know, as composers, we get a lot of inspiration from a lot of different sources. I know I do, whether it be just an image, whether it be a person, whether it be a place. And so, being a father of three, I have a lot of moments of, let's say, inspiration from them, or have had. They're adults now. So, but this song I wrote for my oldest daughter, and she just, you know, and she was quite young when I wrote this song, because before she could seemingly walk, she seemed to have an inclination toward dancing, and seemed like she danced before she walked. So this is called Gavriel's, with a V, Gavriel's Dance. One, two, three.
Thank you. And yes, you've been so patient. Thank you.
That was great. So this goes to the heart of the creative genius of jazz. So it's always amazed me how you get from the title to the song, or the song to the title, without the crutch of lyrics. So you earlier played a gorgeous song that you named after your daughter-in-law. How do you go from the knowledge and love of your daughter-in-law to chord progressions, a drum rhythm, a melody, a lead chart of sound? How do you do that?
I don't know. No. I mean, we're thankful that there's I mean, I have to be honest with you. From my perspective, it is a spiritual experience. I feel that even what we do from an improvisational aspect, when we're creating, as you just heard us on this last song, I mean, it's kind of coming from a source bigger than us, and then through us, and then to you. In its purest form, that's what it's about. So I think of composition as the same way. Of course, we've been trained musically, so we know certain elements in terms of music theory that work together and come together to form, specific harmonies and melodies and things like that. And so certainly that's all a part of it. But I think the inspirational part of it is a part that you can't, that's kind of among those intangibles. You know what I mean?
So it's different for every song.
It's different for every song. It's different for even, there's some songs that I'm writing right now, or some songs that I've written in the past where it's taken me, years. I may write something and then come back to it later, you know what I mean? Because I just couldn't figure out where to go with it. And then there's other songs where I've written like in 20 minutes, or something, where it was a very definite inspiration, and the melody and the harmony kind of came together very quickly. So it varies. It varies not only from song to song, but also from moment to moment, I think, even when we're improvising.
I was dancing to that one.
Oh yeah, you got the idea. Yeah, from that. Yeah. So that's the other thing too. Lyrics is I've been experimenting lately, and I hope that this will be on my next recording with lyrics. There's actually on my new recording, New Dreams, I have a fine vocalist, Nadelka Prescott, is featured. I don't know if you haven't heard that name, look for her work. She's phenomenal. But she actually sang the song that I wrote for my daughter that you referred to, Amylah song. She is actually singing on that recording, but she's not singing words. It's just a beautiful tone within the ensemble of the voice. But there are a couple songs on that record where she is singing lyrics, and those lyrics actually came from a gentleman lyricist in the Boston area, one of the songs, and another set of lyrics from a colleague of ours, Lance Bryant, great tenor saxophone and saxophonist. So that's, but I'm actually experimenting now with some lyrics, so look out for the next record.
Thank you. And I think on some level, just to piggyback on what Yoron was saying, whether composing or improvising, there's this interesting balance where we work really hard and put in a lot of hours to develop the facilities, the infrastructure, if you will, so that when the moments of inspiration come, we have the wherewithal to harness that into something. So it's like if you have never picked up an instrument before and you become inspired. I mean, if you became inspired right now and you wanted to write a poem, but you had to write it in a language you don't speak, then the burst of creativity and inspiration would likely be quelled by the shortage of fluency in the language you're using to articulate it. And so our job, ironically, is to just spend a lot of time making sure we have our house in order so that when the muse shows up and knocks on the door, they're showing up not to a hot mess, but to something where they can actually attach to something. And I mean,
Where we can facilitate it.
yeah. So thank you for that question. Oh yes, no, go ahead.
Actually, this goes back to the previous song. Morning Song, was it called?
Morning song.
Morning Song. In the beginning, when Henry was playing the bass, I noticed you standing up and reaching back and plucking the strings above. And I know Henry's bass doesn't have frets, so he knows where the notes and keys are. But when you look over your piano, do you know your notes without seeing the keys, or were you pressing the key down to play? Like, I was curious to see. Does no one knows piano strings without seeing the piano keys?
First of all, kids, do not try this at home. Second, refer back to the first thing, especially if you are speaking to library administrators. That said, just a quick lesson. No, I am not skilled enough to look inside the piano and know exactly what's happening, and it's not actually completely uniform from one instrument to the next either. But if I press down a key, then I can see, I'm not going to invite all of you here to look in, but you can see that the damper comes up. And so I can see, so if I press a G, then that damper is up, which means if I pluck that string, it will resonate in a way where if the key was not held down, it would just be. Now, if I want it to be dampened, I can do that, or I can dampen the string with my finger, and then create sort of a percussive thing. And then after a few minutes, my back starts to hurt, and I stop. Okay. Rod, why don't you introduce this next one? And we'll have one more gap for questions, so
Okay.
if you have any, gather them up for the next interlude.
So this next song is called Picket Fences. And it's not, I know there was a sitcom or some kind of show that was on for years. Maybe it's still on, I don't know. But it's not inspired by that. But when I lived in New Jersey, I was just out one summer on my patio, and I was just looking, and I had never noticed that before in the busyness of life, but all the yards, it's like the landscape, I just saw these fences, these picket fences, and it looks like everybody was kind of uniformed, you know, so it just inspired a thought, and that led to this next composition entitled Picket Fences. So it's really about kind of the landscape of New Jersey from my viewpoint in my neighborhood. So that's what this one's about. Very simple, right? No deep spiritual explanation for this. Just very straight ahead. So I hope you enjoy.
Very, very kind of you not to call it Turnpike Industrial Wasteland.
Yeah.
For 6 years, so I'm permitted to make comments like that.
Yeah, well, we both can relate. We actually share the same alma mater, Noah and I. So, and that school was in New Jersey, let's say. All right, here we go.
to make go off script a minute, not that there is a script, but make a follow-up statement, I guess, about the discussion that preceded this song, and you're saying that it's not based on anything particularly spiritually enlightened or whatever. And I think one of the things that's maybe counterintuitive about jazz is that any song can be a vehicle for a spiritual exploration.
Oh yeah.
So if I didn't know what the title, as soon as we were playing this song, I was like, New Jersey suburbs, and like it was an invitation to get into something together that actually could, if you think about how much spiritual heft John Coltrane got out of Chim Chim Cheree and My Favorite Things, and songs that were not in and of themselves designed to be spiritually profound, and yet in his...
Why not Picket Fences?
Yeah.
Why not? Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
So do we have any questions in our last round of opening it up? Okay. Professor Hogard.
It sounded like, Professor Israel, that you were playing some kind of melodic stuff in that song, but don't drummers just bang on?
I warned you guys, right? I did warn you, right? That's one of my dearest friends. Almost like brothers. Oh, well, yeah, it goes, it's much deeper than banging on things. I mean, this is a musical instrument, and it's, what we do falls on the shoulders of so many legends who have sacrificed to make it possible that someone in my age group and someone in this young man's age group, I mean, we're standing on the giants we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? I mean, everybody from Max Roach, yes, to Tony Williams, to Jack DeJohnette, and Papa Joe Jones. So these people, you have to understand, they were musicians. It didn't make any difference. They could have played the kazoo, and they would have been great because of their commitment to the art form, commitment to music, and so no, we don't just bang on things. We play melodies.
That song had harmonies in it. How could you know that?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, we all have, it's funny, I just did I mentioned it earlier that I did a workshop a couple days ago. And it wasn't for drummers. It was actually only about 3 drummers in a room of about 200 students. And so my job was to talk about the commonality between all of us. I don't care if you played violin or if you played the harp. There's certain musical elements that are part of music that we all have to be responsible for, harmony, melody, rhythm. Because sometimes those that are not drummers, sometimes they forget about the rhythm aspect, and that's something, so these ingredients or elements of music are and there's no limit. That's what I love about it too. There's no limit. The more you know about these things, the more you realize there's so much more to learn. So I hope that answered your question, Jay.
I just wanted to add that you are an excellent pianist also, and you've studied all these things.
Yeah.
And those things are all contributing to what you bring every time you touch the drum.
Exactly. And Jay, those of you know Jay is a great vibraphonist, and yes. And so that's a big part of my upbringing as well, not just the drum set, but also the other percussion instruments, vibraphone being one of my dear favorites that I study, and play, every day. So, yeah, so I mean, you don't, but one thing, sometimes I've encountered situations where musicians feel that they have to play, multiple instruments. So I don't want to actually, articulate that total message, you know, for you that have folks, you know, young people that are playing. You know, I always say, you know, master your instrument, because there's elements of your instrument that you have to master and you have to know. But it's always great, especially when we're talking about the piano, when you're talking about writing music and organizing music and arranging music. You know, the piano is a great tool because it's the only instrument where you can actually see all the notes. You know, so I, by no means, I'm not saying you have to play, you know, 5 different instruments to be a great musician. You know, it's enough just to play one great. But it's also, you have to also have an open mind to understand those elements of music, and you can use the other instruments as a tool to do that. One other thing I'll say that I'm reminded of, you know, when we play as a trio, we're an ensemble. So I always feel that as an ensemble, whoever I'm playing with, the more I know about that instrument, you know, the better I'm going to be ultimately able to accompany that instrument. I always also have a pet peeve that I'm always trying to do, and trying to breathe, figure out, especially when you're playing with a vocalist or a saxophonist or a wind instrument, where breath is so important. I always try to figure out, can I figure out a way that I can breathe with them, you know? And that also helps me to be engaged in the music at a deeper level as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
What decides how you tune your drums? Is there like a standard tuning that you tune your drums to?
It's a good question. I wouldn't say a standard tuning, but every drum, you know, these drums are all different sizes. So every drum has that sweet range, you know what I mean? In other words, if you have you know, this is a fairly small bass drum, right? It's only 16 inches. So if I try to tune this drum too low, it wouldn't work because of the physical nature of this drum. So there is a sweet spot, but that range is pretty wide. So to answer your question, no, there is not a specific standard tuning, but you do have to find that range within each drum for it to actually vibrate at a good rate.
Could somebody compose like on the composition would tell you how to tune your drums?
No. Yeah. No, but different styles of music require different kind of tones. So it's not specific to like a pitch or anything, but stylistically and contextually, yes, again, as I mentioned before, when you listen to the great recordings that proceeded in that style, you can get an idea of how those drums were tuned, and basically look to imitate that. And that's a good way to start. But there is no specific tuning, and to, you know, I'm giving you kind of a general statement, but I've also heard people that go totally against the grain on that. So they may play, you know, jazz, let's say. Typically when you play jazz, the drums are a little higher pitched, but I've heard great drummers play with drums that are actually very low. So, you know, so there's give or take, you know, it's no like fine, you know, like no definitive rule, but there is a good range.
Okay, so we've got, I see 3 more questions, and we might do the lightning round in responding to them briefly. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay, quick question. You're on your couch at home, you're not anywhere near your drum set, but you pick up a handheld instrument to play some percussion on. What's that instrument?
Well, it's funny, in my living room I have a djembe. so that's my go-to. I also have a practice pad sitting there, so, and a pair of sticks, so that's my go-to. I don't have I have a little small djembe too, you know, so sometimes I get on my wife's nerve because we'll be watching something and I'm tapping on something. And so, but yeah. I think
so go ahead.
Do any of you have like a favorite time signature?
Wherever it's tipping.
Wherever it feels good. Yeah, that's a good answer to that.
So Noah and then Stephanie.
It was going with the tuning of the drums. I noticed earlier in one of the songs you turned your snares off. Did you tune the snare at all to play without the snares on?
Yeah, but a lot of times when I actually tune the snare drum, I tune it with the snares off, because that the sound of
So you have the sound that you want as a tom
without the snare drum, and a lot of times to kind of blend with the rest of the kit. You know, it's a certain kind of relationship that I'm looking for.
I was admiring it when you were playing it earlier in one of the songs. I was saying, "Wow, it sounds like you really tuned that fit, but it sounds as though you did."
Yeah.
So because I played drums. I played saxophone when I was young. Picked up drums later on, and I found I never had to turn the snares off when I was playing. It was always with the snares on. I turned them off sometimes, but never tuned it. And I was wondering if you had to tune it.
Yeah.
It sounded like you did.
Yeah, the snares on, snares off. I do that a lot, you know, during a given performance, you know, because sometimes if you're playing a quieter piece and you have the snares on, they will vibrate, right? And sometimes you want to avoid that.
That's more aggressive.
But even just if he's not playing, but I play something loud, it goes.
Yeah.
True. I also, one other thing, pardon me for doubling on. Early on, I noticed you had the brushes. You put the brush on the right tom and you rolled it. That was great. I've never heard that sound, the rolling of the brush on the tom.
Yeah.
It sounded like a machine gun almost. It was really a really unique sound.
Yeah. That's again, you know, I mean, that's just something. Yeah. That's just something. A is something that I heard at that time, but B is just, you know, I'm glad you think I'm the first to do that. keep that thought, okay? But honestly, I'm not.
I've never heard it before. You're the first I've heard.
Okay, good. Love it. but again, you know, when you stand on the shoulders of giants, you pick up things like that.
That was a cool trick. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got one more question.
So it's a comment. I'm really inexperienced at hearing drums. This is probably the first time I really concentrated on it. And I have a dance and movement background. And what I kept visualizing when I was hearing the drums was the texture. It's like I could visualize the type of texture that I was walking on or that I was moving on. I think of a lot of instruments, I feel emotion, sad or happy, but I actually got this sense of the physicality of the sound in a way that I hadn't before. It was just really interesting to have that visually or kinesthetically so clear. So it was a really interesting experience. I just wanted to mention it.
Great, yeah.
Thank you. This is a really visceral music. It's one of the reasons we love it, and it's at the risk of sounding too far out. If the things we create are as simple as happy or sad, then we might as well just write a poem and express that we're happy or sad and be done with not spend so many hours practicing. Ultimately, what we're doing more than anything is it's oversimplification, but we are often trying to get at those emotions and experiences and tactile states that are within us, but that are not as well articulated through other means. As you've learned by now, Yoron is a plenty articulate person. So if it was just a matter, if everything about his daughter could be expressed in words, then maybe there wouldn't be any reason to write a song. But it's bringing these other elements of human experience to an externalized state. So now I'm going to talk about putting money in the punch bowl. How was that for a pivot? Not very good. But,
segue.
But I just wanted to remind you, first of all, that thanks to our generous funders, we're delighted to offer this as a free event. And if you do in fact find yourself some combination of burdened by surplus money, and or inspired by both wanting to hear Yoron's music over and over again, and you want to buy a CD, or inspired to help subsidize the continuation of this program into 2023. There's a punch bowl for that, and you can sign up on a mailing list for Resonant Motion and for my other relevant activities if you want, and please come talk to us afterwards. We are very approachable. If you want to buy a CD, Kate, would you mind? The lovely and talented woman waving her hand there will gladly allow you to purchase one. And so why don't you set up this last tune?
Okay. This song, actually, it's great to have Henry here playing the bass because he actually recorded this song with me on a record entitled This Moment, live in Boston. We actually did a concert at the Berkeley Performance Center, and that concert was recorded live, and this is one of the songs on that recording. In terms of composing it, you know, it's funny, this is not really about a person or a place, but it's more about a message. And again, we can use our music to express messages or concepts or ideas or ideals maybe that we have. And this is simply entitled Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. And the message behind this song is that, you know, tomorrow is never promised to any of us. And so we need to make sure that we appreciate and enjoy the moment that we're in at this time. So with that being said, I hope you enjoy Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. happen at 2 o'clock in Middletown. Thank you guys for being here. I just wanted, aside from the